I'm joined by UB Professor James Gardner. Professor Gardner focuses on constitutional and election law. Professor, thank you so much for joining me on the 5:30.
Great to be with you.
There are a lot of questions surrounding this decision. Are we seeing a recurring problem when it comes to democracy? And I ask that because when you look at Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, and some are asking, does that apply to a man not explicitly charged with insurrection in a criminal case?
Well, okay, that's two questions. Is this going to be a recurring problem? I don't know. I mean, we hope not. We hope that the Trump situation is unique. On the other hand, there is a process of democratic backsliding that's going on around the world in stable democracies. And so maybe it will be something that comes up again and again. As far as not being charged with a crime, that's irrelevant. The Republicans used the exact same argument in the impeachment proceedings against Donald Trump. They said, well, if it wasn't an actual crime on the books, then it's not an impeachable offense, which is false. And it's the same thing under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. It doesn't require anyone to have been charged or convicted of insurrection. It only requires them to have actually engaged in insurrection.
You know, one of the things I've heard today a couple of times, could this happen in New York State? Can you explain that?
Sure, it could happen in New York State. And my understanding is that recently a bunch of members of the legislature wrote a letter to the Board of Elections urging the Board of Elections to make an administrative decision to remove Trump from the ballot. In a state like New York, removing Trump from the ballot would not have much of an effect because he's not going to win the state. But in other states, it could be potentially decisive.
Does this Colorado ruling represent a new level of maybe accountability for Trump over his efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election?
I certainly hope so. I will say the trend that's emerging in the state courts is not all that promising. Colorado Supreme Court is the only court so far to have ruled in this way. The three other courts have considered the question, and they have chosen either to put it off or dismiss on procedural grounds, or the Michigan Supreme Court decided that it's actually not a question that courts can decide, which seems strange because the 14th Amendment is a piece of law that courts routinely interpret.
And as you're talking with students and other people in the legal industry, do we see what role is the U.S. Supreme Court going to have in this? Like, where is this going next? When you talk to people on the street and they hear what happened, they're like, well, is the Supreme Court going to weigh in here? What is next? Right.
So the entire situation is caused by a very strange aspect of our constitutional system for selecting presidents, which is that we do not have in the United States a nationwide election for the one office that is a nationwide office. What we have is 51 separate elections in each of the states in the District of Columbia. And so the only body that is capable of imposing some kind of uniformity on that is the U.S. Supreme Court. I assume that the Colorado case will be quickly appealed, and the Colorado Supreme Court has said they will stay their ruling pending a decision by the U.S. Supreme Court.
Professor James Gardner, thank you so much for speaking with us and your insight on this topic and joining us today on the 5:30. Thank you again.
Thank you.